I assume you did not have the opportunity to follow us the whole morning, which we have been discussing the case of Guatemala and the fight against corruption and impunity there. But Commissioner Ivan Velasquez said something interesting just before they finished here, and he said that the goal is that no one in Guatemala is above the law. And I just want to briefly start by asking you, and I'll do it with the introduction, if anyone in Norway is above the law. And I want to start with you, Eirik Schea, Director of the Norwegian National Authority for Investigation and Prosecution of Economic and Environmental Crime. Is anyone above the law in Norway?
You see, that's the question about impunity, right? So, in Norway, if you look at the investigational and prosecutorial authorities, we don't have any real anti-corruption agency. So my department is a part of the Norwegian prosecuting authority. And I am not really independent at all. I'm supervised by the Director of Public Prosecutions. But he is quite clearly independent from government. Even from not only the Ministry of Justice, but the whole government can't instruct the DPP in particular cases, which is a good thing. So just two small examples, because we don't have these ministerial or presidential examples as in Guatemala, I think, in Norway. 1996, we had a new government in Norway, Labour government. One of the ministers turned out he was Mr. Pettersen. He was having some investment affairs in a Norwegian company, Fideco, and he had an issue with some tax returns. This came up just as the new government took office. After 4 weeks, we launched an investigation on this tax fraud case. And he stepped down from the cabinet because of this after 4 weeks. So it was really a kind of scandal. There was no way, any kind of instructions or any kind of pressure in either way from DPP or from government or from anyone else for us to not launch the investigation. And he was obviously fined afterwards.
And that's a success story, of course. And we'll
which is a good story, yeah. Even though his investment was quite small, really, some $500,000 Norwegian kroner.
I want to ask you about pressure later, but I'll turn to you first, Kristian Holte, Director of Norwegian Tax Authority, Skatterektor. Maybe more generally, is anyone above the law when it comes to economic crime in Norway?
No. That's the short answer, I guess. I think I would like to start with saying, one of my main concerns as a tax director in Norway is to keep what I see as big value for the Norwegian tax system, and that's the public confidence in our system. And I think the independence that you touch upon with your question is an important and vital part of that. Another part is of course the idea that the tax authorities are, performing their tasks in a just and equal manner when it comes to all taxpayers. And the third point is that it's also vital that we kind of have the transparency that makes people that are able to look into matters. There's a guy that said, I think 112 years ago in the United States, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., he voiced the words, "Tax is the price of civilization." I think what is important in that quotation is actually the fact that the tax system and the way the system works is totally reliant upon the public confidence. It's a social contract between the people and the government, and that contract is under attack if one of these prerequisites that I just mentioned is compromised.
It's good to get the original source for that quote, because I think most people now think it's Pettersen.
That's right, and I want to correct that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a bit longer, older than that.
Kristian Foss, Riksrevisor, Chairman of the Board of Directors of the Office of the Norwegian Auditor General. Is anyone about the law in Norway when it comes to economic crime?
Simple answer is as my friend said, no, no. And even to ask a question is a kind of a culture we don't know about in our country since 300 years ago. Because remember, but I mean, corruption was there in the 19th century. The Supreme Audit Institution of Norway, Riksrevisjon, has just passed 200 years. And as early as in 1818, at the time, Parliament of Norway, not independent, but under Swedish rule, accepted or decided that the audit institution should be independent, not an internal audit institution for the Ministry of Finance, as it still is in most countries in the world. No independent audit institutions in whole of Asia, for example, and to my knowledge, not at all in Africa. Independent means independent in terms of budget, appointing your staff, and publishing your reports and so on, quite freely, and presenting them freely. That is not the case mostly outside the western part of the world.
Is this to our foreign visitors? We mentioned that you're a former finance minister of the Conservative Party.
Yeah, if you may. My background is elected parliamentary member in 32 years, and it's a kind of tradition to appoint as auditor generals in Norway former members of parliament, to establish a contact between the professionals, my 450 members, staff people, and the parliament, because we are a parliamentary institution controlling and auditing the public sector. I'm sort of not surprised, I would say, but I'm impressed by the audacity you have to be so clear in your answers that there is no one that is above the law in Norway. We had Professor Beate Schea here yesterday, and her claim was that we are very naive in Norway when it comes to thinking that corruption and tax planning is something that happens to... Tax planning is not illegal in Norway. You are free to plan your economic situation as it within the law.
Okay.
Tax planning is her way of talking.
Okay, but using tax planning, among other things, to hide corruption, for example, that we don't have that to the same degree in Norway as other places. On a more general level, are we too naive when it comes to this question here?
Well, I think we might. I don't think we are too naive, actually, but I think what Solfjell and others rightly point out is that, you know, Norway is not free of the threats, so to speak, to just performing that equal and just implementation of, for example, our tax system, as I just mentioned. I mean, we have our challenges, definitely. And I think those are going in many directions. I think one concern I have as a tax director in Norway is to not shy away from the difficult cases. I mean, we know for sure, and we have been together with also the side that Trond Eirik represents. We have been tackling difficult cases with also different types of outcomes. I think that's, as you all know, if you follow the Norwegian debate, that's those cases might produce quite much debate in the media, debate in society. Are we going correctly after the right kind of actors. And I think one concern that is unquestionable is that there is a bit vague border between what you call tax evasion and tax planning. So that holds for international tax evasion, tax planning issues, and also for national companies. So I think also when I, for example, discuss these issues in the OECD, which I obviously is a topic later on today, I think that's some of the same kind of issues that we have, and in which Norway is not safe from or excluded from the same types of pressure discussions that we have.
But you said that there are reactions when cases are coming up, and are the challenges in Norway? It seems like in the media and also from politicians and maybe also from the prosecution side, I don't know, that the challenge is or are rotten apples in the bag, and not a systemic problem where secrecy enables, the bad side of tax planning, the cases that we really don't want. Do we fully understand and be a part of a system that actually enables this?
I think the transparency in Norway is definitely it's a virtue. It's a good basis for maintaining that confidence that we are fairly good off when it comes to having a system that works. I must mention actually that last week I had the opportunity to go to the House of Commons in UK just to discuss these issues of transparency in international tax planning, and that the sole reason I think why I was invited from Norway was that they view upon Norway that we have a quite transparent system. We have open tax lists, for example. There's a balance between we have to log in to look up Per Kristian's or mine. My income, but still it's an open system, and that's quite unique internationally. It's so unique that some British MPs call this tax porn, because it's considered to be going way.
And maybe we should support porn for once. But still, Norwegian companies who use the big four auditing firms, PwC, Ernst & Young, KPMG, and Deloitte, pay significantly less tax than companies who do not use the four. What does that tell you, Schea, about the system?
We were to speak about independence, right? And then I started to reflect on formal independence, which is obviously we are quite well off in I'd say Scandinavia or maybe Northern Europe compared to at least Mr. Vescal's part of the world. So independence doesn't really mean anything to answer your questions if you don't look at independence as also a question of capacity. So I think in Norway we're quite much less naive than 10 years ago when it comes to both corruption and tax avoidance. Also concerning the big companies. But if you look at it as in a capacity view, the independence question, I think Norway is quite well organized. Norway is also a country which have some very big global operating companies, partly owned by the Norwegian government. By the Ministry of Commerce. If it doesn't answer your question about the tax avoidance, but we have had a lot more big international corruption cases than Sweden and Denmark. Really, doesn't suggest that we have more grand corruption in Norwegian companies than Swedish or Danish companies. But we have had the criminal cases. Let me just mention one. I'm sure some of you are familiar with the Yara case. It's Scandinavia's biggest corruption case, a court case, as far as today. A Norwegian, partly government-owned company operating in Libya, India, and corruption charges in these countries. Just the travel expenses and the translation expenses in that particular criminal case at my office was about a little less than 5 million Norwegian kroner. I'm not sure what that is in dollars, but whether 5 million. That's about 1/3 of my budget for variable costs in 2017. So you don't really have the muscles to have too many of these cases because they're quite expensive and demand quite much skills to handle. So I think the independence question is, at least in Norway or in Scandinavia, much more a question of capacity.
And resources. And the Big Four have almost 1 million employees around the world.
I know.
And they have secrecy as their business model. I mean, how can a state, a rich but small state like Norway, prosecute these cases independently when you look at it from a capacity side?
Well, it's not up to me to answer what is the right capacity for economic for the economic part of the police, but my personal impression is that the economic part of the police investigation is too weak in Norway. Too many cases are left with capacity reasons undiscovered, and I think we are just in the beginning of building up economic resources in the police area. But let me say about public sector, that I think public sector in Norway is quite clean. Talking about the state public sector. First of all, because of transparency. Because transparency is the best way of making people act in the right way. Because they all know that the letters very, very short after can be in the papers. They know that the criminal, that the active press can be there a minute after they have left letters in their office and so on. So I think that introduction of a transparency in the public sector and the right for the press to claim every document, and also for the audit institution to have the right access to every document, even those who are NATO secret in the Ministry of Defense, and so on, I think is makes the system runs in the public sector without corruption. But where I think we are still a little bit naive is to see the problems of state-owned companies involving in international business, like Statoil, like Yara, like Telenor, like the oil sector and so. But we have managed, I would say, one is a good example. The way we manage our oil sector is now a lot of countries in the world learning from, because we have managed an effective tax system for oil companies. I remember a good friend of mine who was Minister of Finance before I went to the office, once visited China. This was before, about 30 years ago. And after the official meetings, the Minister of Finance asked his Norwegian colleague, "What in the hell have you managed to keep the American oil companies under control? And how can you tax them?" This was in the beginning of the Chinese dialogue. I know a lot of countries around the world, developing countries, have asked the same question. How it is possible to learn from American companies and even to tax them. And we have managed that system, to establish a system. Why is that so? Well, we have a tradition in Norway that we, in some areas where we have bigger enemies outside the country, political parties do unite and make a compromise. And the tax system for the oil sector in Norway has always been decided as a part of a consensus system. There has not been kind of party election campaign about to reduce taxes for oil companies, for example, which I really think is a good thing.
I would like to say that I think Trond Eirik's point here about the capacity issue is very highly relevant, and I think that's where we should not be naive in Norway. There's I experience it's a difficulty to really handle some of the more complicated cases that might be dealing with international transactions, transnational companies. And we have proposed, and I have proposed certain changes also when it comes to how we can perform our activities. And one issue deals with how you actually are able to determine tax liability. I mean, how are we able to determine tax liability? And if you combine kind of a great capacity with secrecy, it's very difficult. So we would like to see that we have stronger disclosure requirements for the companies, specifically in an area where you see where you could expose the motives or the intention behind transactions. So you could actually require more information about tax planning. I mean, that's highly relevant for us to be able to determine tax liability, and that's an area where I feel the resistance from that community. But I think it's a political issue in Norway, and it's being discussed. Also, I think going from formality to reality when it comes to determining where different activities in a company structure should be taxed. That's also something that OECD is moving stepwise towards. You could always question if OECD is the right arena,
and we will.
I know we will. So I will not be part of that discussion. So I would just like to say that I think it's maybe not the ideal. It's not going all the way, but it's moving in the right direction, and it's a kind of consensus-driven process. So I support that.
And there's sort of a battle going on now, one could say, between Parliament and the Ministry of Finance about extended country-to-country reporting, which I guess we don't have time to get into too much.
I'd love to get into that, actually. But,
okay, if you can give us like a little torch of an opinion here, then that would be great.
I would say that it's not necessarily a difference in opinion when it comes to the wish for transparency, but it's kind of reflecting what's possible at this point. And I think if you look at country-by-country reporting as it has been agreed upon in the OECD BEPS process and the OECD negotiations, it's not possible to breach the confidentiality that's part of that agreement at this stage. It will be renegotiated in 2020. That's an opportunity to use that structure to make it more open. But it will be difficult, I think, for Norway to unilaterally go against what's kind of the framing of the negotiations.
But finally, one area of international politics where Norway should not show leadership. Schea, you can read a lot about this process, I guess, on Polish Wikipedia's website if you want to get into it. But Schea, there's a few words that are mentioned here that we cannot go by, and it's international oil companies and words starting with trans. And the Transocean case is something that you in Økokrim had to drop or decided to drop this summer after 11 years of investigation and time in court. And for those of you who don't know it, the oil rig company Transocean and 3 of its tax advisors were charged with contributing to serious tax evasion of 11 billion kroner after, among other things, internal sales to a Cayman Island registered company. To what extent were you and the prosecution and people in your teams submitted to pressure by different interests in this process? Did you feel any pressure from external forces, be it companies or politicians or anyone from within Norway or abroad during this process?
As you know, some people are evaluating the case, and it's going to be a transparent report from the evaluation. So we'll see.
Should we expect anything interesting to come out of it?
We'll see in March, April. I think I comment like this. There has never been any kind of pressure, formally or informally, from my supervisor, whether one should conduct a case or anything. As I mentioned, when you put on a kind of case like this in a criminal context, on a criminal case arena, where I mean the criminal process is based on the accused's right and all this, you know that you are putting on yourself an enormous pressure. But you also know that you don't afford to make any small or medium mistake at all. So that's the game in a criminal case like this. Obviously the pressure is high, but then it's not from the DPP or from the political community or
There are many actors who would be interested in discrediting people involved on the prosecution side or the investigation side.
I think Transocean stated on its first global annual report after we launched the investigation that they would they put some money away and reported it in their annuals, and they stated that they were going to fight this wherever. They would have to, so obviously it's a pressure. But not from the government or from the DPP.
So to end, to what extent does an experience like Transocean create a dynamic in Økokrim, for example, where it's harder to take on a big case like that the next time it turns up instead of going after the medium-sized fish?
I think the important thing is really to just continually learn, and I think they're going to learn quite much from the handling of this case, and just use it to make us better. And our mandate is sort of to not stick with a medium-sized fish. But again, this is conducting criminal cases, and then you have to base it on what is achievable in the court system in a criminal case. We are not kind of a truth commission or writing some kind of a white paper. It's handling of criminal cases.
Which is a different question. Holte, to what extent are you in the tax authorities able to and willing to go after the big fish instead of just a small and medium, which is much more low-hanging?
I think it's a matter of principle, actually. I think it's not about tactics or winning or losing. It's about striving for a kind of just implementation of the rulings that we have. And I agree with Schea that it's also a matter of learning from these cases that take many years, that have very there is a burden also on the institutions that drive the processes, obviously. I must also agree that I think the capacity for investigating economic crime in Norway, that's an issue that should be discussed. I totally agree. I think we see that need from the tax and services side, and so I think that's important.
And Foss, should not just the capacity but also maybe the mandate of the Auditor General be strengthened and widened?
No, I don't think so. I'm satisfied with the mandate given by the Parliament as new as from 2002. The mandate gives us the freedom we need, and in our system of checks and balances we may also make a report on how our tax institutions, how effective they are to give priority to the big fish, not the medium and the small fishes, and how effective they are to use the the tools they have now in the law system to go after transnational companies moving to the low tax countries. That report will be published in about a year from now.
Thank you. I think at least all of us here can say the best of luck to all of you in your important jobs.